what's up, everybody? Welcome into Cooler Talk presented by RTIC. Got all my good cooler supplies here, which you're going to definitely need this spring. Glad to be with you. I am back from Mobile, Alabama. I was there this week for the Senior Bowl. It's always one of my favorite trips, and I'll take all of your questions, and you'll see them down at the bottom of the screen that I get. And because people know that I'm, here and I was there, they want to know how the Senior Bowl was. And I get this first question from Joe asking me how the Senior Bowl was. I love going. I go to the Senior Bowl every year. I go to the Combine every year. The Combine's a little different because, as most of you know, they'll call it the Underwear Olympics because they're doing things on air. They're running routes on air. They're not really doing anything, really of a competition nature against one another. Senior Bowl it's football. It really is football. It's 3 days of practices, and then it's a game on Saturday. And the game is not, I don't know, to be honest, I don't know how many scouts or personnel people actually will stay for the game. They pretty much stay for the 2-3 practice or stay for the 3 practices, or in some cases, they see a couple practices and they're like, no, I'm good. I've seen enough. Because the scouts have seen these guys all year long. And in some cases, they saw them the year before too. So they don't need to see them in practices. They've seen them. It's really, for the media and for the coaches to get a chance to see him. Coaches and GMs are pretty much seeing these guys for the first time. Now, some GMs have seen these players, but the coaches are seeing them for the first time. So it's really it's a great event. Jim Nagy's executive director of the Senior Bowl. He has done a heck of a job. He's taken it to a whole different level. And when you think about the importance of the Senior Bowl to the Texans, I think back to 2014. That was the first year that I went. Drafted C.J. Fedorowicz out of that Senior Bowl. Just think of the players I've seen. The next year, the 2015 year, it was after the 2015 season when we were there and saw DJ Reader just completely destroying people. I mean, completely destroying people. And I was like, man, he's playing. I just didn't think we would do it after signing Vince Wilfork. I was like, we kind of got our interior guy, and they went and drafted DJ Reader in the 5th round. He's been phenomenal for this franchise. He was at the Senior Bowl last year. Great example. Guys that stood out throughout. I remember writing down Lonnie Johnson's name a number of times, watching him in one-on-ones against wide receivers. He became a Texan, obviously. And then the 2 linemen, Titus Howard went in the 1st round, and then Max Sharping in the 2nd. And Max, when he went to the Senior Bowl last year, he had an ankle issue and was kind of dealing with that a little bit, and really didn't have a chance to kind of show it off as much as he possibly could. And then, of course, Titus really got better throughout the week. The first day that I saw him, I thought, there's some good things here. But then, of course, the video of him going against Montez Sweat kind of went viral a little bit. But after that, boy, he was really, really good. And that sort of cemented his first-round status. So the Senior Bowl was a really fun trip, and kind of leads me to this question from Mike on YouTube. He says, what is the priority with limited draft picks? Now, a couple things here. Number one, the Texans are limited in that they don't have a first rounder. But when all the compensatory picks are calculated and in, the Texans are going to end up having about 8 picks. And Bill O'Brien has alluded to the fact that you never know what might happen before the draft. Some movement, some different things. So you never know what's going to happen. I mean, if you think about what happened heading into the season with the trades for Laramie, for Kenny, for Carlos Hyde, those trades, who's to say the Texans aren't active before the draft to maybe move up in the 2nd round, maybe somehow move into the 1st? Who knows what they're going to end up doing. But what the priority becomes is kind of interesting. I do think that Texans have got to be able to get after the passer a little bit better. That was something that throughout the year they struggled at times. And when J.J. went out, they did struggle a little bit in getting to the quarterback. Now, I do think there's plenty of potential in Jacob Martin. I think he is really, really fun to watch. But Jacob's got to be on the field, and he's got to be able to stop the run a little bit better and play the edge a little bit better, set the edge a little bit better. You'll get Duke Ejiofor back, who I'm excited to see. Duke is, I think, a really polished pass rusher. He's coming off an Achilles, but you're going to get him back. Now, that happened in May. So by the time you get on the field in training camp in July, you're talking about, 15, 16 months after the injury. So hopefully Duke's going to be able to give you something off the edge as well. But I still think you've got to be able to find guys that can get after the quarterback. Now, you could say that pretty much every year, right? You find guys get after the quarterback. But if you think about what the Texans are going to have to do to, A, win the AFC South again, and then, B, get to a different level. A, to win AFC South, Ryan Tannehill probably goes back to Tennessee, I think. And then the Colts, whether they go back to Jacoby Brissett or whomever, they're going to throw the football a little bit with Frank Reich. So you've got to be able to get after the quarterback in those situations. So I would think that's going to be one of the priorities, first of all. And then you got to see how things shake out through free agency. And, does Bradley Roby come back? Is he re-signed with this team? Because if he doesn't, then obviously corner becomes a pretty high priority. I did see a couple of good corners at the Senior Bowl, some guys that really, really showed it off. Troy Pride from out of Notre Dame, I thought had a really, really good week at corner. So maybe that's a position. I know a lot of people talk about running back. We'll obviously have to see what happens with Carlos Hyde. But I think the trade for Carlos last year showed that you can find quality running backs in a lot of different places. So you don't have to get one in the draft. The Texans didn't draft one last year, and people were apoplectic about that. Hey, you didn't draft the running back, and then you ended up having, with Duke Johnson and Carlos Hyde, as good a combination as you could possibly have after Lamar Miller went down. So I do think you've got to be a little bit better rushing the quarterback. I think, back to my point about B, go through the AFC South. Yeah, you got to get after the quarterback. You got to stop Derrick Henry in Tennessee, et cetera. But if you're going to get to the next level, there are two quarterbacks you really have got to stop. Number one is Lamar Jackson. Number two is Patrick Mahomes. And you better have some pass rush, especially against Mahomes, that bottles him up and gives him issue, because you can't let Patrick Mahomes, as we saw, not only sit in the pocket, but get out of the pocket. So you got to have some pass rushers that can get there quickly and make some plays. So bringing Whitney back is great. Having Jacob Martin back in the second year is going to be fun. And then Duke Ejiofor added to the mix is going to be awesome. You have Brendan Scarlett, who re-signed last year. So you've got guys at that particular position. But you can always add guys to the mix. And I give you this quick story. Back in 2013, the Kansas City Chiefs had Tamba Ali and Justin Houston. They had two really good pass rushers. In the first round, they drafted D. Ford. And so I texted their director of player personnel, who I knew, and I said, D. Ford, really? He goes, you cannot have enough pass rushers in this league. And that made all the sense in the world to me. So I think that's definitely going to be at the top of the list. All right, Levin, hopefully I said that right. Levin on YouTube says, what do you think needs to happen for us to get over the hump? How much time do we have? And it's not so much that there's so many things that we need to get over the hump, but I think it's really kind of a nuanced question, to be honest. I think for teams to get over the hump, I'm sure in Kansas City they were asking themselves that last year. And then they went out, they got Tyrann Mathieu, they traded for Frank Clark, they added some pieces defensively, and, man, they thought they had it licked. And then halfway through the year, we beat them. And then, the Colts beat them, then we beat them, then the Packers beat them, all in Kansas City. And they're thinking, wait a second. We were going to get over the hump with these two additions. We had Tyrann Mathieu and Frank Clark, and, man, what's happening to this team? Oh, my goodness. And then all of a sudden, Chiefs caught fire and played extremely well. The defense started sort of getting it. The pieces fit together pretty well. And I think one of the things about getting over the hump is you got to make sure that the puzzle pieces all fit together. And I think continuity helps you. When you look at Kansas City offense that beat us in the divisional round, Patrick's been the starter for 2 years. But you think about what 2 years together does. That offense, other than Mecole Hardman, had been together for the last 2 years. With Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, that offensive line, they had all been together for 2 years. The continuity is so hugely important. Well, Texans, think about it. You brought Kenny Stills in, Laramie's in, Carlos in, Duke's in, and you got Max Sharping, and you got Titus Howard. What happens if now you bring those guys back to the fold in 2020? They have a full year of playing together, and now they're in their second year playing together. That continuity, I think, is going to pay a lot of dividends on the offensive side of the ball. And defensively, that kind of goes back to my point about the puzzle pieces going together. In Kansas City, early on in the year, this year, 2019, those pieces weren't quite fitting together. And then all of a sudden, they started kind of finding their role with a new defensive coordinator, mind you, and Steve Spagnuolo. They started getting those pieces to work together. Spagnuolo figured out what guys could do what. They had some good talent, and all of a sudden, boom, they fit it together, and they ended up being a much better defense than they were in 2018. And so they ended up going to the Super Bowl. So I think there are a lot of different things that go into your question 11. I think it's a great one. But I do think that the quarterbacks here, your stud left tackles here, your soon-to-be star right tackles here, your offensive line is now – I mean, think about last year at this time. What were we talking about? We knew what the priority was, as Mike asked. We knew what the priority was. Man, we got to fix the offensive line. What did we do? Went out and fixed the offensive line. Had 3 new starters in it, and one ended up going to the Pro Bowl, and one ended up being on the all-rookie team, and the other one played better and better and better by the week, and who is eventually going to be one of the better guards in the AFC, and Max Sharping. So you upgraded that offensive line significantly, and that will pay off the more that group plays together. Now, the last thing I would say about getting over the hump is you got to stay healthy. And sometimes that's out of your control. And I think back to the 2017 Jaguars. 2017 Jaguars were talented, but they didn't lose anybody all year long to injury. No one. They lost Telvin Smith for 2 games due to concussion. That was it. They stayed healthy. Your team stays healthy for a significant portion of the year. I think you could end up getting yourself over the hump. If you've got a team that's got a quarterback, which you do, you've got some players on defense, which you do, you got an opportunity to get over the hump. But you've got to be able to stay healthy for longer than – look, and I think JJ's a great example of that. In the game against Kansas City, it was just his second game back. I mean, that was it. So he really was not at the level he was in the first 7-8 games of the year when he played in Kansas City the first time. So you keep your guys healthy. And I know that's sort of a crapshoot, but Kansas City had some guys banged up, and they missed Chris Jones for stretches at a time. But then Chris Jones gets back for the AFC Championship game, and he's dominant against the Tennessee Titans. But they didn't lose guys for half a year. You know, we lost Titus after week, 10 or 11. That was a killer. We lost JJ for 8 weeks. I mean, those are all things that if you keep guys healthy, you can help yourself get over the hump. So very nuanced question, but I like it, Levin. Very good. This from Derek on Facebook. What's the running back situation for the future? So let's start with what we know, and that is Duke Johnson under contract here. So we know Duke is here, which I love. I think Duke will continue to be used in a variety of ways in this offense, and I love that. I thought he had a solid year, and I'd like to see even more from him. So that's what we know. Karan Higdon was on the practice squad, and I believe he signed a futures contract, so he'll be here. So you got Karan Higdon, and you got Duke Johnson. Carlos Hyde is, I believe, an unrestricted free agent. So you got to make a decision there. Lamar Miller, same thing. So if you're unable to get contracts worked out or you can't bring those 2 guys back, then running back does become a priority in the draft, potentially in free agency or in a trade. And I think what a lot of people would tell you, and I would be one of those, with running backs, I think we proved this year in a trade for Martinez Rankin, we got Carlos Hyde back. The Chiefs, they didn't have a need for Carlos Hyde, and we didn't at that time have a need for Martinez Rankin. So sort of traded, hey, this guy might help you. Hey, this guy might help you. We get Carlos Hyde the week before the season. He rushes for over 1,000 yards for the first time in his career. And sometimes with a running back, it's about fit. And Carlos was the right fit for this team in 2019. So those are the 2 that we know, Duke Johnson, Karan Higdon. If we cannot bring back Lamar Miller and or Carlos Hyde, then running back ends up being more of a priority. Now, at that point, do you want a veteran? Do you want a rookie? I'll tell you this about the draft class. The draft class is loaded with running backs. Loaded. Put that in all caps. I hate sending text in all caps unless I'm emphasizing something, and that's what I would do. Loaded. It has got running backs all over the place. Yes, Travis Etienne, who would have been great for the Texans, he went back to Clemson. He's about the only one. Cam Akers, Florida State. Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin. A.J. Dillon's a 240-pound back from Boston College. Those are guys just off the top of my head. DeAndre Swift from Georgia. There are a ton of running backs in this draft that are just all throughout. And then I saw a few at the Senior Bowl that you could even look at on day 3. Joshua Kelly from UCLA was maybe the most impressive running back I saw. Man, he was really good. LaMichael Pirine from Florida is a guy that I absolutely love and I think would fit this locker room very, very well. Determined guy with some good quicks, excellent receiver out of the backfield. So this running back class is loaded. And I don't think there will be a ton of them that go in the first round because I just don't think teams want to put a first-round pick on a running back. So at that point, they're just going to get pushed further and further down where the Texans have draft picks. So we'll have to see what happens with Carlos and with Lamar this offseason from a free agency standpoint. But you know you've got Duke and you know you got Cron Higdon. So that's – and of course, sorry, forgot about Gilly, who gave you some really good reps at fullback. And obviously fullback is not used 100% of the time, but to see Gilly come in and give you reps in the playoffs, he did a really good job there. So you know you've got that in your stable. How do you make that a little bit better? Well, you got to see what you got in free agency with Carlos and Lamar, and then you got to look at the running backs in the draft where there are plenty of them, no question about it. All right, Cooler Talk, we'll have this each and every Friday. In a few weeks, we're going to end up going to the Combine up in Indianapolis, where everybody gets together, not just seniors, but all the juniors and redshirt sophomores that declared. So they get a chance to see them up there doing their testing and all that kind of stuff to get ready for the draft in April. So every Friday, Cooler Talk, have your questions ready to go, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or however you're watching it. That's how you get your questions into me. And thanks to our friends over at RTIC. You guys have a great weekend. Be safe, and we'll see you next time. And as always, go Texans.